Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. Question. Have you ever been deceived or ripped off by somebody? By anybody? Raise your hand real quick. Has anyone ever been deceived or ripped off by someone? Even for something small, you bought something or whatever it is, you've been deceived. Right? So I want you to think for a moment how you felt. So this is directly connected with the next chapter. Babun fi nahi anil ghishi wal khida'. The chapter on the prohibition of deception and tricking somebody else. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال this is a story about أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مر على صبرة طعام. In another riwayah, sabrati ta'amin. So the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he passed by a large bag of food that was being sold. فَأَدْخَلَ يَدَهُ فِيهَا. So he had a suspicion that something is not right here. You know, when they used to sell grain, they would have like a big giant bag and it would be posted for sale in the old time markets. It's 1400 years ago. So he went and he put his hand inside the grain that was being sold, check it out and say, hey, what's going on in here? فَنَالَتْ أَصَابِعُهُ بَلَالًا. His hands felt the moisture of water inside of that grain. فَقَالْ مَا هَذَا يَا صَاحِبَ الطَّعَامِ. So what is this, seller of the food? I mean, ta'am nowadays in Arabic means food. In the past, it didn't mean that. It had a different meaning. The meaning was a certain type of grain. I forgot which grain it was, but it's a certain type of grain. So he says, what is this, person who's selling this grain? What's going on? Why is there moisture underneath? قال أصابته السماء يا رسول الله. The sky hit it, O Messenger of Allah. Meaning it rained and some of the rain got inside of that grain that I was selling. قال أفلا جعلته فوق الطعام حتى يراه الناس. He said, why didn't you put the one that got wet on top so people could see that this grain quality has been reduced? So when they're going to buy it, they know what they're buying. They're not buying they think they're buying the best stuff that looks good, really nice and shiny on top. But underneath there's something that's not the highest quality. If they buy the whole bag, or if they say, give me 3 artal of like this, 3 liters or whatever it is, you're going to scoop it and you're going to put it in the bag. They're going to think they're getting the stuff that they're seeing on top, but they're also going to get the stuff that's a little bit messed up on the bottom. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, Man ghashana falaysa minna. Whoever deceives us is not one of us. Rawahu Muslim. This hadith in Sahih Muslim. So it teaches us something very important. There's 2 things I want you to focus on. Number 1, the standard that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is setting. The standard that he's setting is an extremely high standard. Because the thing is, someone can give an excuse and say, you know what? I'm still selling, this is still edible. People can still eat it. So I'm not deceiving the person. They're still going to buy some, decent, there's still good grain in there. I'm not buying something that's rotten and they can't eat it. It's just gone down a little bit in quality. I want you to imagine for a moment, let's say somebody buys a case of juice and it's in cans. And some of the cans are bent. And you put that in the back and somebody buys the entire case and they see all the nice cans in the front, but somebody dropped the case. The cans got bent in the back. And you said, the juice is still good. There's nothing wrong with the juice. I'm not deceiving anybody. But in this case, let's say that can was going to be used in your banquet, or you're going to be serving your guests. You're going to put the can on each table. If they have a bent can, the guest is going to be like, part of the juice is still good, right? But the can is bent. You say, I can't use that as a display. So it has a little bit inferior quality. But if you're hiding that fact, and you knowingly are hiding that fact, there's a level of deception. It's a very low level of deception, but it's still a type of deception. So the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was picking on something small in order to set a very high bar for honesty and trust in the Muslim community. And then he said, the second point, Man ghashana falaysa minna. Whoever deceives us, whoever cheats us, is not one of us. Us refers to the Muslims. And so he's hinting at this idea that the Muslims are a community. And this, of course, it doesn't mean you start deceiving non-Muslims. You don't do what's called mafhum al-mukhalafa here. Some people, they read the hadith, and they say, oh, see, we don't do it to Muslims, but we can rip off non-Muslims. No, you don't do that. But there's a special connection when it comes to the Muslims. Because that's why I asked you the question, who's been deceived? Who's been ripped off before? Imagine that was your friend who did it to you. Or imagine that was your brother Muslim who did it to you. You feel something different. If a Muslim deceives you, if a Muslim rips you off, you have a different feeling than somebody else, some random person you don't know, not even Muslim, doesn't have any religion, whatever it may be, it doesn't affect you. But when it's your own Muslim brother or sister that steals from you or rips you off, it affects you at every level. And every time it happens, it affects the entire ummah because of what one or two or three or four people are doing. So we need to be extremely on guard and cautious. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put honesty in our hearts, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us prioritize to do what is right over the little tiny gains of this dunya. Ameen. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum.